Welcome, everybody, to the Roots Podcast. I am your host, Sean Pitcher. Today's guest we have on is Tavis Piattoly. He is a veteran in the sports nutrition field. This year is his 22nd year in sports nutrition. So he's going to be bringing us a wealth of different nuggets, knowledge, and information from the vast amount of experience that he's had so far over his career. Tavis, I want to welcome you to the podcast.
Sean, it's always good to see you, my friend. And you mentioned nuggets. I used to eat a lot of those when I was a kid. So hopefully we're not going to be talking about chicken nuggets.
Hey, I don't think it doesn't matter what age you are. I have chicken nuggets in my freezer, and I like to have those once in a while. It's okay.
Absolutely.
But I want to start out. I start this question out with every single podcast. Can you tell the audience what is your roots?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in New Orleans. I still kind of live not too far from. I'm about 35, 40 minutes from the city of New Orleans. 47 years old and been here, most of my life. I have an incredible family, a 12-year-old daughter, a wife, and just love Louisiana. But we do have some plans probably to move to Florida at some point with, once Grace gets to a point where she's, 18, 20, going on her own and whatever that is, we would love to get to the beach. We're beach junkies. I'm a music junkie. I know we'll talk about career path and dietitian, but yeah, been a big fan of music for most of my life. I was a singer in a 90s alternative cover band.
Oh,
and then, I can move my computer, but I got a massive baseball card collection and that I don't really collect anymore. I was when I was a kid. And then about 80 signed baseballs right here to my left. So it's like, I love sports. I love music and just, love being around the friends and family.
yeah, I can see the Who sign in the back of you right there. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
so
man.
it's like a couple of posters of Pearl Jam because I've seen them in Wrigley Field a few times. I've seen them about 18 times, 20 times. I
Wow.
was a concert junkie for a long time, and it's still go to some. When you can. It's like concerts. The prices of concerts today are just insane compared to what they used to be, and we used to stand in line to at the record store or the department store to wait for tickets. Now it's like an easy little click of the button. So taking my daughter to see Paramore. They're playing in New Orleans in July, and then my wife and I are going. She loves Pink, so we're going to go see Pink in Wrigley Field in August.
Yeah, and some of those bands you have to listen to them while you have the chance because, especially a lot of the classic rock bands in the 80s, from the 70s, 80s, 90s, like you don't know how much longer they're going to tour. Or sometimes they'll say it is my last tour, but it's not their last tour, and they'll randomly just show up. It's always hard to tell.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I know you've had a lot of experience at multiple different levels of athletics, but I know your main focus right now is the high school space. Kind of where did that passion come from to move from some of these professional settings, college setting, to now focus mostly on high school athletes?
Yeah, I think that it's just a really fun market to work with. These are kids that are trying to figure things out, right? They're trying to develop, they're trying to grow, they're trying to get used to what their body's doing. And then, with so many different angles being thrown at them, some of these kids are playing 2 and 3 sports. They're being asked to accomplish certain goals by parents and coaches. And they don't really know. They don't have all the tools and resources. And nutrition is, in my opinion, really the secret weapon or the missing link to that puzzle when you look at performance, lifting, sleep, private training. And, they listen. It's not that pro athletes don't and college athletes don't. That was a fun time. And, it was a key part of development. But to me, from an opportunity standpoint, the market there is untapped and it's unlimited. So that's one of the reasons, but it's also a group of individuals and kids that just really love that they absorb the information you give them, and some of them take that and they run with it. And they have a lot of success because you can be a key contributor to helping them grow and develop. So it's just a fun market to work with.
What do you think then becomes for dietitians that want to work in that space? What becomes the strategy to try to get more dietitians in there, right? Whether
Yeah,
it's consulting or, I mean, I think ultimately if we can actually get dietitians in a building and stay in a building to be in that environment, that would be obviously the ultimate goal. But what are your thoughts there?
yeah, no, and that's what we're trying to discover with one of the businesses I have is My Sports Dietitian. My partner is an athletic trainer. He spent 35 years in athletic training in the high school setting. So he's lived it. He's pretty much became that, or he was that nutrition resource for such a long time because 900 student athletes in his school, and they'd go to him and say, "Doc, what do I need to do to gain weight? What do you know about this supplement?" He'd reach out to me and say, "What do you know about this?" So we feel like, wow, there's a lot of problems and a lot of pain points in there that we can solve. But how do we do that, right? How do you create online tools and resources for the RD that's wanting to get in that space? There's a couple of allies that you need to work with to get into that space because the athletic director, the budget for the school is pretty limited. in every school is different. That's what we've learned is
Mhm.
you have some schools, every team has their own budget. Obviously, football is probably going to be the one, or whatever school has a very successful rate in that sport is going to be that sport that's going to have the most money to spend on outside resources. But the school itself is probably not going to be able to employ that person unless they can do multiple things like teach, be a
Mhm.
strength coach, be a nutrition person. But really, do we see full-time sports dietitians that are not doing a lot of other things in the school? So the athletic trainers, number one, I think your biggest ally. They are your friend. They will help you because they are handling a lot of this right now. You also have high school strength and conditioning specialists or certified strength and conditioning coaches that are now starting to incorporate more in high school settings. So those two individuals, are ones that will trust what you can do. You just have to, number one, go into that setting with knowledge. If you've never worked in sports, don't try to go in that area right now and sell yourself, because it's going to be a hard sell for you to do that. If you have 10, 15 years experience, or even 5 years of experience working in sports, especially at the collegiate and professional level, then that holds a lot of weight. And that's just kind of like anything else. Experience holds weight, where you worked holds weight. But if you said, hey, I'm a hospital dietitian and I want to work in sports, but I've never done it, don't go there just yet. Give it some time, get some mentorship, and learn what you need to do before you just, because that's where we struggled for so long in our field. 20 something years ago, we didn't really have hardly any people in
Mhm.
college or professional sports, because for years they employed hospital staff. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just they weren't trained for sports, and neither were we. And
Mhm.
we self-taught ourselves. And now it's like we have a massive conglomerate of sports dietitians that are in a lot of different places, from college, professional, and tactical.
And now I mean, I was even part of this where I was at Nationwide Children's Hospital, and now hospitals are actually opening sports medicine facilities that's just specifically for sports. Like basically, like you said, it's even tough enough just to get an athletic trainer into some of these high schools just to make sure you have someone there from a safety perspective to deal with injuries. But, we had, I think, who knows where it is now, but maybe 30, 40 high schools with athletic trainers. And then I at that point, because as you know, I have that dual background, strength and conditioning. We then started rolling out the strength and conditioning part. We had a dietitian on staff. So I think from what I've seen too, even back at my hometown, they're doing kind of a similar model, but a lot of these hospitals are trying to attack that high school setting and provide those resources, because you can almost kind of bundle them all together and provide kind of one package. But I think still, even though if you do that and you're only around the athletes a couple hours a week, you may help some, you may get some athletes that are one-offs and they may ask for kind of some individual consultation, but it's still going to be a challenge to make the behavior change that we need or want to if you don't have someone there on a day in, day out basis.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The hospital model, they've done a great job from the athletic training side of things. And some of these hospitals, I used to work for a hospital, but I was in the fitness industry for 14 years, where they owned our fitness centers.
Hmm.
And for years, we were like, we need a place like an Athlete's Performance at the time, which is now Exos. We need a sports performance facility, because no one was doing a really good job of training kids. We had individual people, but they didn't have the best facilities, and they didn't understand that model, until now. That hospital system now has 70 athletic trainers. They
Wow.
cover so many schools. They have a massive performance reach now. They have, I think, 5 different performance facilities connected to the physical therapy component of that hospital, which makes a lot of sense. My daughter actually trains at one of those places close to the house. So yeah, that model is really good. But what they still don't have is they don't have nutrition services, right?
Hmm.
They may contract someone. There may be someone who works for the fitness center, but I don't see a need to have someone full time in a high school, like just an RD, because there's really, kids are in class all day and then they go straight
Yeah.
from class to practice. So there's not like college, where kids have breaks and they have maybe 2 days off in classes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so they can spend time in the fueling station, make a smoothie, education. So the high school is a little different unless you teach a course, and that's why we're trying to capture this virtually, through the parents, through the athletic trainer, through coaches, to let them know, hey, we can provide so many different services for your school, and we can do this all in a virtual model, just like we're doing here. We can do consultations, team
Mhm.
talks, et cetera, et cetera. It's just we're still trying to figure it out. It's not easy.
Could you go a little bit more in depth? So how does essentially a My Sports Dietitian then work? Or how do you approach a school and provide the services? Or because my experience, obviously I've interned with you in the past, and I know you guys have collected or have a variety of dietitians that you guys utilize to kind of reach out to some of these high schools and see if they would like to utilize your services. Could you go into that a little more depth?
Yeah. So right now we have a couple of people on our sales team that are actively reaching out to certain places in their area, and we have people coming to us through our symposium. So we've generated symposiums, and there's kind of two components of My Sports Dietitian. One, it's an educational tool for athletic trainers, dietitians, and strength coaches, and anyone in sports medicine. With our online symposiums, we do 4 of those a year, 2 sports-based, 2 high school-based. And then we have our division of where we provide services to club teams, performance centers, high school teams, et cetera. And that's a combination of one-on-one services as well as team talks, as well as a toolkit of resources that we've developed. But what we're building now, we're in a beta right now with 4 dietitians. Ronnie has built, my business partner, Ronnie Harper, has built a mentorship program. And with all the tools and resources we've created, from the online platform, the guides, the presentations, the app that we've created, the E2N app, we're going to give them all these tools and resources as part of this mentorship program to go out. And also we have a lead generation system that we've partnered with that's going to be launching soon, that gives them access to all of these individuals, meaning you'll have this lead generation has access to every athletic trainer, every athletic director in their region, so they can call, meet with them, and present them with the services that we provide. So what we're trying to do moving forward is we're trying to equip the dietitian, the sports dietitian, with all the tools and resources. If they're like, hey, how do I get into high school? Boom, if you join this mentorship program, we're going to train you. We're going to give you all the tools and resources. It's going to cost X amount of money. And then within 90 days, you should have a couple of accounts signed up for you based on this. And if not, then we got to go back to the drawing board. But we're beta testing that now with 4 dietitians over the next 3 months. And then we're going to track towards the end of the year when school starts again, how effective they were in order to get accounts. So we're hoping in the next probably 3 to 5 years to have a couple of hundred RDs with a good business. It's an aggressive model. Ronnie's got a plan, and he has all this mapped out. We're meeting next week to kind of talk a little bit more about that. But we're hoping to kind of do what some of these organizations have done with college and professional RDs, grow that side, where we're going to try to grow the high school side. We want to put more dietitians in front of parents and coaches and athletes.
Which is super exciting, because it's just like you said, it's an untapped area that I think if we can get that, I forgot who I was talking to about this the other day, but if you think about, if we're able to target a lot of these high schools and get the strength, the athletic training, even if we get mental conditioning, nutrition, at that 14 to 18-year-old age range, and just think about the type of individuals we'd have then coming in as a freshman into college, and how much more like your freshman who would probably be at where they need to be as a senior is now probably there as a freshman.
Right.
So it's like, you can imagine like all these kids coming in that are this much more high level at 18, 19 years old, coming in as a freshman, and just the level of competition, the level of preparedness going in, I can see just being an absolute game changer for some programs.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head, because I love when a parent calls when their child's 14, right? 14 years old. Hey, my son or my daughter, they really are interested in nutrition, and they need to accomplish X, Y, and Z. Awesome. Versus the child's 18 and they're like, they have a good chance at the college scholarship, but they need to gain 20 pounds in 2 months. I'm like, I would have been great to meet you 2 years ago. Not saying we can't hit some of those targets, but we can't rush this. This is not something I can go, boom, here's all the tools and resources, and here's your nutrition plan, and let's gain 20 pounds in 2 months, right? It's like, if you have talent, I get all the reasons why parents invest in trainers and all these other things, but invest in nutrition first. That's what I tell every kid when I show them my nutrition manual. It starts up with nutrition. Nutrition's up here. And then when nutrition is solid, your strength and conditioning is going to be good. Your energy levels are going to be good. You're going to recover faster. You're going to build muscle. But if nutrition is not good, then all those other pieces are not going to really fall into place, and you're not going to maximize your talent. So I know we're biased, but it really is the catalyst. Like, without it, it's just, the engine doesn't run.
I mean, I do a visual all the time for athletes, recruits, parents, and I write down those 3 things: fueling, sleep, hydration. And like at 24 hours a day, I'll ask, I literally did this with a recruit the other day. I asked them, how many hours do you spend doing these 3 things out of 24 hours? You can now divide that number by 24 hours and like, okay, that's a percentage of your day spending these 3 things. Do you think these have an effect on you on the court? If you spend 40, 50%, yes. Do you have to do them every day? Yes. So it then becomes, I mean, you could tell me I'm wrong, but I mean, the proof's in the pudding right there with that like simple example that I just gave you. So, and everyone wants to rush stuff nowadays. It's just convenience, fast. I want to push it as quick as possible. Like you said, let's do this in 2 months. And, I always tell them, like, it's like a slow cooker. You're going to give me time, especially if these athletes that are 14, 15, 16 years old. and you're not going to go to college till 18, 19 years old, depending on your situation. Like we got a full, 3-4 years, depending on when we get you in. Like we don't need to be, if you're a linebacker and you're 100, 80 pounds now, like you don't need to be 230 pounds in 6 months. If we can put on 5 to 10 pounds of muscle, a year or 10 to 15, depending on how aggressive we are, then like we're at a good clip. And as long as you're staying healthy and not sick and you're performing better on the field, we're progressing in the right direction.
It's a perfect example, Mike. We're literally right before you and I hopped on this meeting. My daughter and I were talking, and she's like, "Dad, I don't want to go to training today." It's like she's off of school now. She was out of school last Wednesday. She was with her mom, and she called me and she's like, "I don't want to go to training. It's at 10 o'clock, which is in about 50 minutes." And I'm like, "Look, kiddo, you have a goal. You even wrote it on the refrigerator. I want to make the junior high volleyball team," and kept counting down the days for tryouts because she's a tall 12-year-old at 5'7". Really has some good skills, but she needs that. She needs training now. She doesn't need dad and mom and friends to help her with volleyball. So I said, look, this is your goal. If you want to do that, I know it's going to suck. You don't feel, there's days where you don't feel like doing things because you're tired, but that's your goal. These are things that you have to fight through and get through in order to accomplish that. So it's great that you mentioned those 3 little pillars with sleep, hydration, and nutrition.
Mm-hmm. So if we look at the high school setting, what are you seeing maybe as the top 2, top 3 most common topics parents, athletes are bringing to you that are just always a continuous challenge or constantly coming up all the time?
Yeah, the biggest thing is just adequate fueling. I mean, most of these kids are so underfueled, and it's due to the schedule. I think the schedule and the training of what I used to do in high school, and I know you played college ball. I played high school football, but we just lifted at school, and we did our conditioning and maybe did some practice, and then we went home. There were no private coaches. There were none of that specialization back then. Now these kids are pulled in so many different directions. Summer's about to start for many places, and some kids are going to be lifting for 3 hours in the morning with football, and then they have to go play 3 hours of baseball. Or some quarterbacks and receivers do their 3 hours of lifting conditioning for football. Then they have 7-on-7 for 3 or 4 hours, and they're burning more calories. And that's what I've seen is the biggest struggle is the schedule for some of these kids. Their bodies are just so broken down because they're moving 7 days a week. And I'm like, I met with the kid yesterday, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, his son's 14. He's 5'3", 113, small kid, but the wrestling coach wants him to get to 106, but he's also got to try to get a little bigger and stronger for baseball. And it's like, you're being pulled in so many crazy directions. And, the good news is his training is not too bad, but I think that's the biggest problem is kids are doing way too much. They're overtrained. They're exhausted, and they just have no time to fuel. And it's why they're not seeing their body develop and grow. So that's number one. And I think number 2 is, from a planning perspective, a lot of these kids don't plan ahead. They don't really invest in nutrition. They're not putting nutrition as really an important piece of the puzzle until someone says, you got to gain weight, right? Or you got to do this. Then also supplements. I mean, that's a whole big area. A lot of these kids think they can solve their problem with some sort of pill or powder, which, we know there's some things that have good evidence to support, right? Protein, creatine, vitamin D, omega-3, those are things, but they're not going to just acutely all of a sudden go, wow, I'm going to take creatine and build muscle. Well, no, not if you're in a 2,000 calorie deficit or even a 500 calorie deficit. You're not going to build muscle in a deficit just because you took creatine. So and those are kind of the 3 main things I see on a regular basis.
And we see that a lot with, specifically right now in basketball, just AAU basketball. Like our guys get done with the whole entire season, and it's like, all right, well, the whole entire summer and the springtime, it's just we're going to keep playing basketball. It's probably the same thing with any travel team that we see amongst any of these different sports. But a lot of our advice from our team is just relax and take a break. Go play another sport. Go relax. Go do something that's going to like physically and mentally allow you to just disconnect from having to do your sport. And getting in, especially working with our sports psychologists, getting them to understand like how to differentiate these two and then how to disconnect and be able to pull away from it and know that you're not going to get worse just because you're taking a week off to have a break, or maybe you need to like microdose and do a little bit of basketball here and there so that you still mentally feel like you're doing something, but not then do 2, 3, 4 hours of training. It just becomes a tough balance. And then whether it's the parents, whether it's these AAU coaches or just travel coaches in general, trying to swoo you to like be on their team and say you need to be part of this. I think nowadays athletes just have so many, conflicts and so many people pulling him in all these different directions. And that young of an age, I don't know how to say no. It becomes yes, 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 okay. And then you say yes enough times, and now you're, like you said, you're in rough shape. You're injured, you're sick, you're not able to perform. And then once you are, then those people that want you before now don't want you because like, oh, okay, he can't play, and they move on to the next person. And mentally, that's just super tough to deal with at times.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I think people are starting to realize that this is nutrition, something that we have to invest in, right? Just like anything else. It's like a bank account. You get a budget every day and you got to try to hit that budget of calories. And, for a 14 or 18-year-old kid, they don't know how to figure that stuff out, right? We have to have tools, and they have to have support, and multiple support. It can't just be mom and dad. I mean, they're critical because they buy the food, they prep the food, they help them understand what to do. But you have to have, people like ourselves, the athletic trainer, their coaches, really be on board to kind of say, hey, did you bring your snack to practice today to have a post workout, or did you eat breakfast this morning? I mean, something sounds so elementary, but eating breakfast is a critical part for an athlete to grow and develop, because if they miss that meal and their first meal is at lunch at school, they're so already way behind on calories, and they're going to go to practice probably tired, fatigued, mentally fatigued from being in school all day, and then they're going to be physically fatigued when they get home. So yeah, it's a revolving door, but I think because of the investment that they see now at the collegiate space, when they go visit these colleges and go, wow, look at the nutrition station at LSU or Alabama or Texas or wherever it is. These are the resources I have, or I can have, if I work harder and then they start realizing why these schools are now invested in nutrition. So, I'm appreciative of what the college professionals have done, because they're really the ones who set the stone. Even before pro, like college has invested more into nutrition before pro, and then pro came after that for the most part.
Yeah, it's providing the athlete in every environment they're going to be in those options is then, especially with how crazy their schedule and the routine and like just back to back and going from this building to that place to that place. The more areas, let's say in college on a campus, that you can have those things available where they can just pop by, grab it, drink it, whatever it may be, you're in a lot better situation. Whereas some of these high school athletes, like the parents are only going to be able to control so much after they leave the house. It's like once they leave the house, are they pre-planned ahead? Are they thinking ahead? Are you putting snacks in their bag? If you're not, well, what's at school? If something's not at school, but then they got to go to this trainer, and then they got to go to this different practice field. It's like you could be in 4 or 5 different environments in one day. And, a 14, 15, 16-year-old isn't thinking about, what do I have to do next? How do I feel next? How do I hydrate next? So, if you don't have these environments with those options, especially high quality options, you can just see where failure can arise very quickly.
Yeah, and the biggest distractor is this guy right here, right? The phone.
Yeah.
That's another thing these kids are like so consumed with. I mean, we're all consumed with it. There's times where I'm looking at Twitter or Facebook or just something, want to get a score. So it's when I was in college, I didn't have a phone, so I didn't have that distraction at all. Just I had whatever. We didn't even really have the internet until like my third year of college. So everything was like still going to the library to find books.
Yeah, I had my first cell phone. I think my mom bought me one when I was like the end of high school, like beginning college. And I can remember, like it's just vivid in my mind. I'm walking through the buildings in college, and everybody has their phone, and everyone's heads down like this. And I'm like, I'm just walking head up, and I'm looking around. I'm like, whoa, is this what's like the future's gonna hold? Like everyone's head's gonna be down, no one's gonna talk to her, everyone's looking at their phone. But obviously, that's a whole nother
Yeah,
rabbit hole you could go
yeah,
down. Um, Now I know obviously besides the high school space, you're currently working with OmegaQuant. I know you have Liquid Fuel. You've had collaboration with the Taylor Hooten Foundation, so you've had a very big presence in the supplement area. Could you speak about a couple of those OmegaQuant, Liquid Fuel? What are you doing there, and then maybe we can kind of transition and like how does that all tie into your mission and education
yeah.
from the Taylor Hooten Foundation?
Yeah, OmegaQuant, that's my full-time day-to-day. And what I love about the company, number one, is that they're an analytics biomarker company. So a testing company that our founder, Dr. Bill Harris, invented the way to test your blood for omega-3 in 2004. So him and Dr. Von Schacke, they met one time at a conference and then figured out, let's discover a way to test omega-3 because it's a critical marker. When you look at fish oil, people think you just go up to 100 people and say, you know what omega-3 is? Oh yeah, fish oil, right? And I'd say probably most of those people don't realize we can test your blood for omega-3. So we're a biomarker analytics company. We use some other finger stick tests like vitamin D. We have an A1C test. We have a prenatal DHA for pregnant moms that can test their blood to see if their DHA levels are high. And then we have a mother's milk. We can test the breast milk for DHA as well, because that's great for brain development. We do a urinary B12, and we have a high sensitivity CRP, a marker for inflammation that's coming out next month. So we work with healthcare providers, teams, sports and college teams, supplement brands that have omega-3 fish oil that call us and say, we'd like to, private label your test kit. So I oversee all of the sales. I work directly with our CEO and just, sell products to a lot of these healthcare providers. And, the test for omega-3, why that's important is because we know when your levels are deficient, which 95% of Americans have an omega-3 deficiency. That's almost everyone, which it's kind of explains why we have probably a lot of inflammation in this country, 900,000 open heart surgeries every single year. But getting your levels to 8 to 12% would mean 35 to 40% risk reduction for coronary heart disease, sudden cardiac death, and primary cardiac arrest, as well as many other things. Brain health improves. We see the aging of the brain slows down. We use in our field that with what you and I do, we use omega-3 fish oil as a way to treat and heal concussion after brain injury. So we also have a certified for sport fish oil as well that's third-party tested by Informed Sports. So that's a new product that we've launched that we started selling to college and professional teams that combines with our test kit so they can test, and then we can help them optimize that with supplementation. So I love the job. I've been there about a year and a half now, and it's been just a great transition.
Yeah, and I would say the nice thing is instead of having to go to your doctor now, it's convenient. You have an at-home test kit. You could test yourself. It's not extremely expensive. It's going to break the bank, and it gives you that quick feedback to allow you as the athlete, the practitioner, maybe it's just mom and dad sitting at home that want to know what their levels are to then, actually have something to go off to take action off of it. And then obviously you guys having the omega-3 supplement along with that to then be able to couple that is super beneficial. But if you look at those,
and I don't recommend people get a blood draw omega-3 only because those labs that test the blood they do a blood draw. They test the plasma phospholipid. That's like a blood glucose. It looks at a 24-hour status. We're testing your whole blood red blood cell, which is a 4-month status of omega-3. So it's like an A1C test.
yeah,
It's going to look at a long shelf life,
which is a lot more accurate, and it's going to be definitely a lot better. But you mentioned obviously, you look at omega-3, magnesium, vitamin D. Those are just 3 really tough nutrients for most Americans to consistently get, right? If you don't drink a lot of milk and you go plant-based, not going to absorb as well, going to be tough there, right? If you're not eating a lot of fatty fish, if you're not eating a lot of nuts, spinach, beans, those are just key areas that if you're eating those consistently, you may be all right. But if you're not eating them at all, you just said again, 95%. In a lot of cases, it almost seems like, we preach food first approach, but it almost seems like we're at a point now, like if you don't supplement, because most people aren't probably going to get them through their food, or our nutrition value in our food now isn't as high quality or as dense as it used to be, that this may be something, I don't know, you could tell me that we have to progress to supplementing more than we ever had before.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Food versus supplements, omega-3, and why the deficiency. Well, I think part of it is there's only marine sources from fish that you can actually raise your levels. If you're the two biggest deficient groups in the world are vegans and the military. So the military, the food supply is probably not high and rich in omega-3, and they're not eating that 4 days a week. That's one reason. Vegans, because the only source that can raise their levels in the blood is algae. So they'd have to take an algae or algal supplement in order to raise their levels in the blood. There's no chia flax that won't do anything to convert to EPA and DHA. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you'd have to eat salmon, mackerel, tuna, halibut 4 days a week to get your levels to 8%, and that's hard. I don't love fish that much. The type of fish I love, like Louisiana fish, catfish, shrimp, crawfish, that has very little to no omega-3, right? So even tuna, which people assume is really high, some forms of tuna are very, very high in omega-3, but you're not eating that 3-4 days a week. So that's where I either take a couple of capsules, or sometimes in the past I used to use liquid omega-3 a pretty good bit. I would do a teaspoon to 2 teaspoons a day to get my 3 to 6 grams, which 6 grams is a high dose. So but then people say, well, wow, you take 6 grams like it's something to be concerned about, but people consume 60,000 grams or 60,000 milligrams of vegetable oil, and they're not concerned, which that should be a bigger concern, the amount of omega-6 and also saturated fat people are consuming. So I'm just consuming a small amount of omega-3 compared to what a lot of people consume when it comes to omega-6.
Or you think about it's like the Inuit or like the Eskimos that I mean, that was their diet, was like fatty fish, and like that was it. So if you're gonna come at me and tell me like, oh, this is too much of a dose, well, they ate that every day, and they're probably some of the healthiest people. So, and in retrospect, whatever you said, I think me taking a little more isn't going to be that big of a deal. It's going to only benefit me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So from I know you're partnered with the Taylor Hooten Foundation. Kind of what is their mission from that perspective too? I know you guys go out to organizations, high schools, colleges, and basically spread the word on nutrition education, specifically regarding supplementation.
Yeah, no, it's a great organization. So Taylor Hooten was a young man 15, 16 years ago, committed suicide after using anabolic steroids. So, Donald Hooten Jr., Taylor's older brother, now is the president of that organization. His dad started that foundation. They partnered with Major League Baseball because baseball had a steroid problem at the time. And they said, look, how do we get your company off the ground and deliver this message? So, Donald and Brian now, I just record podcasts once a month and do a few things virtually every once in a while with them. But they're still actively and incredibly busy on the road into schools talking about the dangers and risk of using performance enhancing drugs, obviously high risk supplements, certain pre-workouts, diet pills, some of the supplements that can be adulterated with amphetamine compounds. I was talking to the folks at Informed Sport while we were at CPSDA last week, and some of the things they're seeing in calcium, they're seeing steroids and just multivitamins and calcium supplements. And just things, you can pull off the shelf. Sometimes athletes send them products that are not tested. Say, hey, can you test this? And they're like, oh, this has got X, Y, and Z in it. You probably don't want to take this because it's going to cause, a ban they're going to lose their eligibility if they're a college student. So you have to be cautious. And so they do a phenomenal job of going to the schools and just making them more aware about this stuff. If I was a kid at one point, at 18, when I left high school and went to LSU, I was like, can I walk on and play football? And I'm like, I had a buddy using steroids, and I was thinking maybe I should do that. And I'm glad I didn't. I mean, I've known some friends that have used, and I've seen firsthand the side effects and the anger and the aggression and obviously performance. I mean, the performance is insane, but they really had a lot of problems, growing up when they were using those types of drugs. So it's a great organization.
Yeah, from whether it's from Taylor, Informed Choice, NSF, you mentioned there, like you're starting to see more and more stuff in supplements. Does it matter whether it's a supplement's being derived from the US, whether it's supplements being derived internationally, or it just doesn't matter at all? It's just across the board, anywhere in the country, wherever we're getting our ingredients from, depending on the facility or the company, it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, it's happening everywhere. I don't know much about the international testing component in regards to how bad it is in certain places. A lot of the raw material, especially steroid powders, come from China. So that's a big problem, and a lot of international stuff gets shipped here. It can happen with manufacturers in the States. So with dietary supplements, you have raw material suppliers, you have the manufacturing facility. They buy the raw material from these different suppliers that specialize. It might be a creatine supplier or a company that specializes in curcumin, turmeric extract, vitamin D. And you want to make sure those raw material suppliers are tested. So there's a lot of things in talking to these testing companies in transit, where it starts at the raw material supplier, but it gets mixed and batched with other things when it gets to the manufacturing facility. There's a lot of cross-contamination that can go on too. So that's why the finished product being tested and certified is important.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's talking to parents or athletes all the time, like you need to at least take something NSF or Informed Choice. Like, I know nothing's gonna be 100% perfect, but you don't want to go into GNC or Vitamin Shop and just take some random thing because this guy recommends you to take. Like, I literally had this conversation with an athlete last week. He's like, "Hey, what are the 3 or 4 things that we were taking, while I was at the facility?" I gave it to him and I was like, "Hey, well, here's some good options." What does he do? Goes to GNC and just grabs GNC stuff, and I'm like, I told you, like, here's the app, here's my recommendations. Like, why didn't you just order it off here? Well, I wanted it right now. I'm like, but that's not the point.
Right. No, we've had athletes when I was with Tulane, we had an athlete walk into a supplement store. They sold them two kids a mass gainer. They tested positive for steroids, and they had to. I don't remember the outcome. I was a consultant at the time, so I wasn't there full time. But they were. I think they got suspended from the team for the year, and then had to be reinstated. So some schools they ban your scholarship and you're done.
Yeah, and I've told that to a couple of athletes as well. Like, do you really want to risk that? Like, you're going to think it's not you. You think it's never going to happen to you because you're young and like, I'm taking this and I have other people taking it and like no one's had a problem. But it also could depend on you could take the same supplement for X amount of years, never have an issue. And then all of a sudden you do take that one batch or that one dose that was tainted or mixed or whatever it may be. And then all of a sudden now you're in a whole different situation. You lost your scholarship. You're not playing at this school. And then, with NIL deals now and money being involved and the businesses being involved, well, now you're losing money. So once you put that big picture in front of them, it becomes, oh, I don't want to lose all of that. Okay, well, then you probably need to make a better decision.
Right. Absolutely.
To kind of finish this off here, being that you've been in the field for 20 plus years, what are maybe your top couple pieces of advice for practitioners coming up through nutrition in the field that maybe you wanted to know at the beginning?
Well, I think the one thing that I wish I would have had was a business background. I think that's the one thing I was missing is business and computers. I was not very savvy with both of that, and then got thrown into a job when I was in the fitness industry to manage departments, which I was like, wow, I guess I'm just going to figure this out and ask my bosses at the time is how do you do those things? So I think it's important for those getting to this field, have some flexibility, do multiple things, wear multiple hats. Don't just settle for one thing and one job. I think it's great to do that and have stability, but it's also good to have other options in the event that look at COVID. For many people, COVID kind of wiped out a lot of work for some people. So having other things to do, working virtually, was very good for those of individuals that had that opportunity. So, but pursue what you love and specialize in that. I think that was important. I'm a sports dietitian, but I don't specialize in eating disorders, and there's certain things I don't specialize in. I prefer to work with athletes that want to gain weight and build muscle. That's where I really want to focus my attention. And I hope I'm not doing this 10, 15 years from now, still working at 60s. But I think having multiple hats is important, having multiple options, but do what you really are passionate about. So if you just want to work with a figure skater or someone in equestrian or football, then do that and then pursue that and keep getting experience with people that have that expertise that can help you grow your career. And as long as you keep pursuing that, you're gonna have a lot of success.
Yeah, my big thing, don't be a one-trick pony. The more you know about multiple parts, or like me having a strength and conditioning background, like I can go talk to strength and conditioning coaches and I can understand and have that kind of chalk talk and understanding with them. And now being in a setting where it's more of a business setting, just every place you go to, find somebody that can mentor you and learn and ask lots of questions. And what's a couple pieces you can take that's going to end up developing and creating your philosophy over time that's going to put you in the best space that you want to get yourself to. Is kind of the goal.
Absolutely.
But Tavis, really appreciate taking some time out of your day to come on. Where can people contact you if they want to chat, have a conversation like this offline?
Yeah, I mean, if they just want to shoot me an email, my personal email is best. It's my first initial and last name, so T as in Tavis, but it's just the letter T in my last name, Piattoly, Piattoly at mysportsd.com. So T Piattoly at mysportsd.com or tpiattoly@gmail.com. Either one of those is fine. Reach out. Happy to answer any questions about career path or whatever you want to discuss.
Fantastic. We'll put that in the show notes. Anyone that wants to look at any of my digital links through my link tree, whether it's my free content I put on all my social media platforms or Roots podcast and any other service that I provide, that will be available on the link in the show notes for you guys to click. But again, appreciate having you on, Tavis. I think this will be a great episode for a lot of the dietitians that are coming up to learn about some of the nuances, especially in the high school space and on supplementation.
Always, my friend, anytime. Thank you so much for having me.
See you.